Hello, hello, hello. Good evening, Yellows, and welcome to this TNC Oppo preview. And it's live. And it's not just live, we're broadcasting across the pond to New York today. So this is an extremely special episode of the TNC Opposition preview. Of course, last time out, it was a solid, and I mean solid point at home to Wolves. That's now 3 unbeaten for the mighty Yellows. We are now going to St James's Park and we are up against Newcastle. And who better to give us all the Newcastle insight than Kristan Heneage, of course, massive Newcastle fan. Kristan, how are you doing over there in New York?
Yeah, I'm okay. I want to say fairly stress-free, but that's only when I'm not thinking about football. Because it's been a season and a half already. We're not even at Christmas.
I wish that the viewers could have listened to our off-air conversation, because you started saying, well, no, I'm not good, or something like that. And I was like, oh, you all right? And you went, no, it's just Newcastle is so bad. So I look forward to speaking to someone that's football team is also struggling, because I've done so many opposition previews this season and everyone's like, oh, it's amazing. Our world, we're the best thing since sliced bread. And I've had to own up to the fact that we've been absolutely shite. So it's lovely to speak to a fan that's also supported someone a little bit shite this season, just to get that in nice and early. Kristan, what is the mood like within the Toon Army right now? Because, of course, the big money takeover is here. It's happened. It's actually a thing. Mike Ashley's out. You've still not won a game this season. There has been so much turbulence at Newcastle already this season. What is the mood like right now?
Turbulence is a great word for it, to be honest, because I think it can feel a bit bipolar because, we haven't won a game. We've not played well. I mean, even the Brentford game, that was frustrating because there was such a rush of not even just excitement, just like we played so much better than we had previously, and yet we only came out with a draw from it. So there's this sort of excitement about the potential that when your football team isn't winning, if you can focus on a brighter future, I think it's easier to tolerate. But unfortunately, that comes with a caveat that right now it is really tough and it's really not that fun to watch all the time, because we're not only battling relegation at this moment in time, we're just battling for a win. We're just 3 points. That's just to get that away from us. It's not even, like I say, it's not even Christmas. And I did not think I'd be sitting there going, please don't be like Derby County. Please, get more than them. Just ascend above that line. And then, let's figure out what to do after that.
Oh, Kristan, this is so nice to hear the misery. Keep it coming, keep it coming. And to get more of that misery out of you, perhaps not actually. Maybe you saw some encouraging signs. What have you taken away from your last result? Of course, a 2-0 loss away at the Emirates. How are you feeling about that result? And how is that going to potentially impact your shape and what you do going into this game tomorrow night against the mighty Norwich City?
Yeah, it's a funny one, that, because I thought there was a bright start. And the problem is that we've only really got 180 minutes worth of kind of, data, so to speak, to evaluate Eddie Howe with. I think we saw a different setup away than we did at home. And that is my curiosity going into tomorrow, is that will he revert to a back three? Because that did seem to put more of our attacking players in better positions to create and score chances. Whereas I thought at the weekend it was more about keeping a much more disciplined formation with a view to then catching Arsenal when they overexpose themselves. So it's trying to find what the line is between that and whether I would say maybe the teams around us, whether we go for a slightly more open approach in the hope that that gives us the chances and the goals that get us wins, as opposed to kind of keeping it really tight at the back, which is, I don't feel like that would be his approach at home against a team that's near us in the league. I feel like he'd be a bit more cavalier than that.
We will get on to talking about this game, Kristan, because it's such a big clash, and we'll talk about how we see it going for sure, without a shadow of a doubt. And before I give you your next question, I just want to say hello to everyone who's joining us live. 127 of you in so far. It's me, James Ears, giving us a zombie nation. Love to see it. Absolutely fine. We're happy with that. Adam says, oi, oi, lads, OTBC, hello. Art Mixer, what a name that is on YouTube. They say up the notch. All sorts of funny comments in it. Adam says swearing sounds better in Geordie. Well, there you go. All of the fun comments are coming out tonight for sure. We are going to Dubai Canary. Is already bringing up the Saudi money. We will be talking about that. Do not worry. We will be getting onto that at all. Dan Greengrass says, have we spoken about Dino's massive chopper yet? No, we haven't, but I'm sure we will. Well, Kristan, I didn't warn you, Kristan. This is a real explicit podcast, so welcome along. Anyway, I want to talk to you about your suspensions, Kristan. There's some big suspensions going into this.
Yeah, there is. So Matt Ritchie and Jamal Lascelles, I think on paper, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but if you looked at our team, you'd probably think, oh, well, that's a big blow for them that Ritchie and Lascelles are out. If I'm really honest on form, I'm not terribly upset that Matt Ritchie is missing for this one, because I think, unfortunately, we obviously went down at the same time and had that season in the Championship where Matt Ritchie really excelled. And I thought maybe even in the summer, if he'd left, he'd have really cemented cult hero status, would have been able to ride off in the sunset and been grand. Unfortunately, I think he's now playing at left back, which is a position he's not familiar with. And I think he's declining physically. So you can see like an uncertainty in the way that he plays. So he just keeps dropping back. And if you watch the second goal, he's so deep that that's what facilitates Martinelli being onside. So I'm actually quite keen to see Jamal Lewis come in and see how he relates to Eddie Howe's style, which is going to be a bit more get forward, do what you're good at. Because I don't want to make Lewis sound like a cliched left back, but it does seem he's a bit more adept going forward than he maybe is doing the defensive side of stuff. And with Lascelles, I don't know, I just feel like he's a little bit worn out almost. I feel like so much has been put on him. He's been the captain, he's been the leader, and he's just not been playing in a good defensive team for a long time. That he's a little bit ragged when he plays. And so, yeah, it's not the biggest curse, in my opinion, that those two are missing. I'm quite happy to hopefully see Fede Fernandez and Jamal Lewis come in, if I'm really honest.
No, totally fair enough. I mean, I can't comment on Lascelles. I've not seen much of him at all. The thing that I guess surprises me somewhat about your comments around Ritchie, because of course there is that former Bournemouth player link with Eddie Howe. So I would have thought that would have worked. So why has that not been happening so far?
I just think because, in all honesty, Matt Ritchie's a winger. He's not a left back. And don't get me wrong, you can move players there. I mean, Gael Clichy is probably the best example I can think of, but that was done at a really young age. And there are definitely players that have moved back later in their career and found success. But I just think the stage he is at now, it's not a position he has been supremely familiar with. And against players like Bukayo Saka and people like this who are fast and dynamic, it's a lot to put on a guy who, you know, is not as quick as he was when he joined. And I don't want to be too harsh on him for that reason, because his effort levels are always there, his commitment levels are always there, but so are mine, and I'm not playing left back either. So it's, you know what I mean? There's a point where you have to be quite ruthless about it and say that this is just not good enough. And you could even argue points to a much wider discussion about this was the issue with Mike Ashley, was that he would just slap a Band-Aid on it and let it go its merry way, instead of addressing the situation and getting us better defenders and improving and recycling through the squad as it sort of aged out.
So speaking of getting better defenders, I really want to ask you about Jamal Lewis, of course, who you signed from Norwich City. At the moment, and let me know in the comments section whether you agree or disagree with this, I think a lot of Norwich fans are thinking we're maybe a little bit surprised that Jamal hasn't maybe played as much for Newcastle, but what's it been like watching him, and how has he performed for Newcastle so far?
Yeah, between him and Jacob Murphy, it hasn't been the greatest two signings that we've made from Norwich.
Of course, I forgot about it. Yeah.
I think here's what I would say about Jamal Lewis. I think he went from a very highly structured setup with Norwich, where his role was really clear and the team was built around putting him in the best position to make the most of what he's good at, to a team that, if I'm really honest, I never saw a consistent structure from. Like, I couldn't tell you through the entirety of the Bruce era what a typical chance was like, what they were trying to get the ball from back to front. Like, what did that really look like? A lot of it was just really direct, if I'm honest. But I think that really exposed him. And then physically, you know, when you do that, you isolate players 1v1, and it does I think, become a lot more about their physical gifts. And I don't think that's somewhere he really excels either. And so I did feel quite sorry for him. Whereas with Jacob, I felt like when he came here, it was more just he didn't have the confidence quite yet. I think he was a little bit frightened because he does have this association with the club. He loves the club. So there was kind of I don't want to get anything wrong. Like he was overthinking everything. Whereas I didn't get that sense with Jamal Lewis. I just felt like he didn't really know what he was supposed to be doing and was too often isolated.
Do you think he'll be a better player under Eddie Howe?
I'd like to think so. He's won. I mean, this is the thing. When a manager comes in, you do kind of wipe the slate with almost everybody. And everyone gets a fresh chance. So, you look at Joe Linton against Brentford, who best I've seen him play the entirety of his time here. And I've been a fairly strong defender of him in terms of I don't think he's had a good time under Bruce because of that lack of structure. I'd like to think someone like Eddie Howe, who seems to put an emphasis on the fullbacks complementing the attacking efforts, someone like Jamal Lewis would benefit from that. But he's got to play at the same time. If he's only going to get these chances, that's my other worry, is that he comes in tomorrow, doesn't, throw down a tremendous performance, and then he's out again. He needs consistency more than anything, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think Jamal is the player that can step in and out the team and expect a 10 out of 10 performance from him. He needs those runs of games. I will always say this, right? Jamal Lewis is one of, if not the nicest footballers I've ever met. He was just so friendly, so kind. So big up Jamal. And I do genuinely, apart from this game against us and the one at Carrow this season, do wish him success at Newcastle.
Isn't every Norwich Academy graduate the nicest guy in football, though? Let's be honest. I feel like you don't raise arseholes, to be frank.
We do literally have a no dick policy now at Norwich, and we don't sign them. So there you go. Kristan, Dean Smith is listening, of course, and he wants to know, how can Norwich City hurt Newcastle tomorrow night? Like, where are the problematic areas for Newcastle right now?
I mean, defensively, like there's no other way. I think that Brentford game was unfortunate because, honestly, I hate singling out players, but Carl Darlow just lets one in. Like and it's like 60 seconds after we've scored. And you just look at it and think that you can't. Yeah, you can put things on the defense. There was some weak tackles for the third goal, I think it was. I think ultimately, getting at the fullbacks, the centre backs. If I assume it's Shah and Fernandez, are not the quickest. So I'm looking at that Timu Pukki running behind that he loves to do, that sort of diagonal on the shoulder. That's the kind of thing where I think, if they catch us high up the field and he does that, doesn't look too fun.
Keep going, come on.
But those are the kind of things, I think you've got quite decent centre midfielders as well. I like Norman. I like Billy Gilmore. So if you can exert control there and then find the spaces in behind, that's where I worry about Norwich personally.
Luckily for you, though, Kristan, sorry to interrupt you there, mate. Norman is injured. He's out.
Okay, so that's a blessing from our perspective then.
Yeah.
But even Billy Gilmore, he's someone that he wants a lot of touches on the ball. He wants to control it. So I'm looking at him as, can John Joe Shelvey win that battle? Which, again, crazy that I'm having to say that in 2021. But, that's the situation that we're in. That, to his credit, been very good in these two games. Have to give him credit for that. But the amount of chances and sort of ups and downs we've had with John Joe Shelvey in terms of, has the penny dropped? No, that was just a nut or a bolt. It sounded like a penny. He's just one of those players that I think may look back on his career and think, I probably could have done more. I could have
as well. I genuinely think that. I know there's the Voldemort chant, and he is the butt of the joke sometimes in the stands. But genuinely, Kristan, I really rated John Joe Shelvey. I really did, and I remember him pinging some balls about Carrow Road when he's played against us before, thinking, top player, and it just seems to have, sadly for him, fallen off a cliff. Let's quickly go to the comment section and address the TNC Nation. Harvey Monk's in the house. Big up, Harvey. Hello. He says, can we finally beat Newcastle? Can someone let me know the last time we beat Newcastle at St James's? Because I'm pretty sure I think I saw this day. It was Robert Fleck that scored.
Wow.
Which was what? 80s, 90s, it was a long time ago. Can someone let us know the last time we beat Newcastle away, please? I would greatly appreciate that. What is everyone saying in the comment section? Let's get some more in here. Oh, wow. CR7's in the house. He says, hello, good evening, Cristiano. It's nice to see you. Oh, wow. Here's a question from Ruth. Question for Kristan. Who inspired you and why? It's like, so, there you go, Kristan. Go on.
And my dad, I would say. My dad inspired me a lot for football. Yeah.
That's class. Why did your dad inspire you, Kristan?
Just because he was the one that, kind of took me to play in Sunday League, got me to watch Newcastle. Then when I started out as a journalist, would take me to grounds at daft o'clock. And because not all of them up in the Northeast are that accessible, but he was always kind of, I'll get me coat and we'll head out. So yeah, he was his inspiration. Yeah, for sure.
Love that, mate. Love that. I don't know if you know Jack, but he says, Kristan, the king. There you go.
I do know Jack. Yeah, we go back a bit.
There's a bit of banter going on already. We love to see it. And Kristan, I really want to quiz you because you are now basically wiping your ass with pound notes. It's unbelievable the amount of money you guys have got. How does it feel to be the richest club on the planet when you've gone from Mike Ashley to that? Like, how does that feel? How are you computing that?
Yeah, there's such a big asterisk next to that, though, obviously, for obvious reasons that, is probably more suitable for Newsnight than TNC. In terms of the means of that money and what that means for the football club, because there were people, I was getting videos from people back home that went to St. James's and were chanting, we've got our club back. And I got to be honest, I feel like we haven't really. It's gone further away than it ever will in terms of like our ownership of it and our say of it.
Wow.
But this is where I think it becomes difficult, and I have to be really honest with my own feelings and acknowledge all of them, because I think that's where the complexity lies. And I can't sit and say to you or anyone else that, from the minute this went through, I was disgusted. And I was so relieved knowing Mike Ashley had gone.
Yeah.
But then I think in the days that followed that, the exhale of that emotion was, but what have we got in its place, and what does this actually mean? That's the problem. Is I think that a lot of people have kind of convinced themselves that either I have to be totally against it, or totally for it with Saudi flags in my name and a tea towel on my head and all that. No, I don't think. I think that you can sit somewhere in between without engaging in whataboutery. And for me, it is, you know what? Mike Ashley really did cripple this club for well over a decade. Took away a lot of people's time, money, energy, all that stuff. And did it to an almost vindictive level in terms of the decisions he made. But I can't then at the same time acknowledge the relief of that and go, oh, well, who cares who comes after him? I can't say that sports director are an abhorrent business, but then go, yeah, but PIF, that's a different kettle of fish. You have to be consistent with your morals, I think. But you have to also be honest in terms of what you actually felt when it happened. And I did feel a tremendous relief when I knew he was definitely gone.
Kristan, that is the soundest take I've heard on the Newcastle takeover, full stop. I really do. I think it's very refreshing to hear that, because you're so true. It's either black or white. You're one or the other. You're in on it with your Saudi flags, or you're out on it and it's totally wrong. And I empathise with the opposition. And on that note, Kristan, you may or may not know, so we're a self-funded football club. We're our owners, our fans, Dealer Smith and Michael Wynne-Jones. What's your opinion on that? Because you're down the bottom with us, but you're absolutely rolling in it. And you've got all these expensive players, and we're a self-funded family football club that's owned by two fans. Mm-hmm. What's your take on the Norwich City ownership compared to yours?
It's the ideal, isn't it? It's the utopia. Don't get me wrong. I know there will be frustrations and obstacles for you guys to overcome because of that. I know that when last season, or the last time you were in the Premier League, rather, there was a lot of, Norwich should change their style and they should do this. And why aren't they going out and spending mad money? And it's like, well, that's not the point of the club. You're not giving it the consideration of the nuance of the situation. You've just looked at a Wikipedia page and gone, oh, he's not good enough. It's that kind of annoys me in a weird way, because especially if you have a platform to discuss this stuff, you should be willing to go out and actually figure out why that is, or why what you think is maybe being pushed back against. And I think for Norwich, you've made a bold decision this season to a certain degree in getting rid of Farker when you did. But I have to be honest, I totally understood why you did it, because I feel like he'd had long enough of a runway to make that change and get you guys into a better position than you're in. And I think what I love about Norwich is, and it is something we may lose actually as time goes on, is the sense of, everyone there. Like, you guys, I assume, have met Delia and hung out with her, and I saw you in the director's box, your big fancy Dans with your sandwiches and but you know what I mean? There's
you don't know that in Newcastle.
For as much as we talk about, or people in this fan base talk about getting the club back, I think you guys genuinely have a claim to say you have a part of your club, because you know the people involved and you can say something. They might not listen, don't get me wrong. It's not that democratic, or the way that we maybe look at German football with the 50+1 and all of that kind of thing. But at least there's an emotional sense of ownership, if not a physical one,
I really did think, Kristan, that you would come on here and go, "We're in the money, we're in the money," and but actually, you've been the complete opposite of that. And actually, it almost sounds like, dare I say, there's almost maybe some jealousy that we've got what we've got, even though you're the richest club in the world.
I'll make an admission now. I don't watch a lot of opposition YouTube channels. TNC is the one I watch regularly. Not just saying that because of present company, but I like it because of what it represents, because it doesn't feel needlessly kind of self-aggrandizing, and that's what I feel like Norwich is. It's a club that says, you know what, and Stephen Fry might have even said this once, like, yeah, we might lose at the weekend, but we can always come back next weekend and have another go. And that to me is kind of football. It's like, it's never too high, it's never too low. The great wins are great, the bad losses are bad, but we'll come back into the middle eventually. And I just think that, to a certain degree, we will more than likely lose that as things go up. Will I have fun in between? Will I still be as engaged emotionally in 5 years' time? I don't know. I'm just trying to focus on this game tomorrow, to be really honest.
We will get to that. And I'm just going to quickly pop to the comment section. And Neil Luther's put in a great comment, and I might need to educate you on this, Kristan. Are you going to get a soccer bot? So do you know what soccer bot is?
I think I saw this when Dean Smith did his tour. It's like the thing that fires the balls, isn't it? It's like the Dortmund, I think, were the ones that kind of gained traction for doing this, didn't they?
Yeah. So we're the only club in the UK that's got one at the moment. Are you going to be making the investment as well?
I think we have to, don't we? I think we have to. If we want to go to the next level, we need a soccer bot.
Oh, absolutely love that. It's brilliant. Loads of people asking us for our score prediction, Kristan. We will get to that at the end. We have to do that. We will do that indeed. Who are the Newcastle players in form at the moment, Kristan? Who should Norwich be worried about come up against tomorrow night?
I mean, Saint-Maximin has to be the top of the list. Yeah, he's... I'll be honest, I had a little bit of a concern actually when Eddie Howe came in about how would he handle more structure, because there was a little doubt in my mind that maybe the total free form that we'd been playing was great for him because he could just find the game wherever it came to him. But actually against Brentford, I thought he did really well. I mean, he scored the equaliser right at the end there as well, which was important. It's just about getting him the ball, I think, in wide areas. I think there's a little bit of a Hatem Ben Arfa about him where if you put him in the middle, he's got too much space and it like overwhelms him a bit and he's got his back to goal too much. If you get him out wide, square him up against a fullback, I'd back him to beat most, if not all, fullbacks in the league at least once a game. That's the problem. I think if you're facing up against us, is that he has the ability to go past people and make it look like he's jogging and they're sprinting. Like it's really impressive, I've got to be honest.
Can you man mark him out of the game?
You probably can, and you could even rotation the fouls out if you want and sort of not kick him out of the game, but kind of unsettle him a bit. Absolutely. I've seen a few nasty sort of swipes at him down the years that he's been with us. But I think that's where hopefully you see a performance from Joe Linton that's more like Brentford than Arsenal in terms of, again, he needs to be out wide because that's where he's best. And yet, against Brentford, we saw a physical forward. We saw someone that stitched the play together, ran in behind, created chances. Like, this was everything he was billed as when he came. So if Eddie Howe goes for that back three and goes Wilson, Saint-Maximin, Joe Linton, I'll feel confident about being able to create chances. The massive, massive caveat to that is, can we actually stop chances as well? It seems far too easy for me to go, well, Dubravka will be in goal, so it'll be a bit safer, because I think you guys do play nice football, and I think the way that you cut teams open, is not going to mesh entirely well with the way that we defend.
I think honestly, mate, I think so much depends on that first goal, which we will get to in just a minute. We will get there indeed. Phoebe's in the house. She says, I'm really looking forward to the game tomorrow. My second trip to St James's Park. If you're going to be in the heavens at St James's Park tomorrow, give us a comment. We will shout you out for making the trip. That's absolutely fantastic stuff if you are making the trip to Newcastle. By the way, on that note, randomly, I've just thought of this. Big up to the Norwich players and coaching staff that has subsidised the Crystal Palace away tickets. That is brilliant, absolutely brilliant from the club, and I'm delighted that they're doing that. Kristan, I'm going to make you think some dark thoughts now, some dark, scary, horrible, worrying thoughts. I'm going to say the word relegation. Are you genuinely worried it could happen, even though you're the richest club in the world?
Yeah, you have to be. You'd be mad not to in our position right now, winless in, 12, 13. Like, you can't ignore that fate. And even that, you say the, richest club in the world and all that. And I've seen a few people say, when we get to January, we'll be grand. But you have to think that will massively depend on what position we're in. Because if we are totally cut adrift and it's, 10, 12 points and it's almost impossible, the type of player that wants to join that is very different than if you are, let's say, 1 point off the relegation zone or even 2 points above the line. Then players will think, I can go there and it'll be fine. But it's that fear. And I think we saw it the last time we went down, to be honest, because that was the year, I believe, we beat Norwich 6-2. And I thought, okay, we'll be fine. They're clicking. They're starting to come together. Yeah. And then we signed Andros Townsend, got really, really close, went down, and he left on a relegation release clause not long after. So maybe it's a case of that, and you just install those get-outs for a lot of players. That is going to be, I think, a big obstacle that the owners and Eddie Howe are going to have to navigate in terms of what players can we attract. Like, I saw a story from the Spanish press this morning saying Ousmane Dembele, and I'm like, absolutely not. No way is it. Like, I'll buy someone a jersey with his name on the back myself if that happens, because I just can't see it. The money they're talking about, the situation we're in, it just doesn't match up in my head at all. I think it would be much more realistic in terms of it'll be players that know the Premier League. It'll be the James Tarkowskis and Jesse Lingards of the world. Right. And that's if we're close to that line. It'll be players that you can plug in instantly. A bit like what Lingard did last year with West Ham. He just came in and just hit the ground running. That's what they're looking for. I don't think they're looking for massive stellar names right now, because it wouldn't fit well with what we've got. You need to raise the level slowly.
I don't know why I just thought this, Kristan. Have you seen that video online of those Newcastle fans singing, "We're the richest club in the world"? Have you seen it?
I think I have, yeah, unfortunately. I think I've...
Well, that was actually what I was about to come on to, Kristan, but you kind of answered the question, really. So this has now become, in my opinion, as a Newcastle fan, a game of FIFA career mode with the cheat code on, right? So you can buy anyone in the world. But what you're saying is that actually that might not happen because of where you are.
Yeah, 100%.
I find that really strange to think about, even though you've got all of this money, and that must be really frustrating for you.
It is a little bit. I mean, I'd say it's a little bit like we're in fancy dress and we don't know if the party we're going to is fancy dress or not. There's a chance we get to January and everyone else is in fancy dress and it's grand. There's a chance that we go and no one else is in fancy dress and we look like idiots. That's the problem, is that you're putting everything on where we are come January. And even then, I feel like, Amanda Staveley, who's sort of the face of this consortium, did so many interviews the day and the days after it went through and said so many things that I think, as much as she said, we'd like to win the league in 5 to 10 years, I think sustainability is going to be central to this, if I'm really honest. I know that's not sexy. I know that's not Coutinho adding a third, in a home game in April. But I just think they're going to want to get essentially the best parts of the situations that have been like this, like Man City, that type of comparison where, yes, they are an elite club now, but they had to muddle through some stuff first before they got the David Silvas of the world and players like this. So I think it will be more like that than just throwing money in and hoping it fixes itself.
But they did get Robinho really early doors, if you remember. And I'm not, Saudi sustainability. I'm not sure on that, mate. Not sure on that.
Fair. I don't have a strong argument against that.
quick couple of comments from the comment section. Thank you so much for lovely comments, by the way. And if you are enjoying this TNC Opposition Preview Live, grab a picture, give it a tweet, and I'll share all of them afterwards as a thanks for your support. Julian with some love for Kristan. He says, great watch. Kristan comes across as a top guy. Well, he's a top guy. That's why he's on the channel tonight. Well, there you go, Kristan. You've got a fan club already. And a rather lively username. And whatever you do, Kristan, don't steal our players like Sarr and Dennis. They bag goals every day. To be honest, I feel like this could be good, maybe good news for Norwich, this Newcastle takeover. Maybe you'll pluck the best players from the other relegation candidates to. Am I clutching at straws, Kristan?
I do like Max Aarons.
No,
not to put the fear amongst you guys, but I do like Max Aarons. Young
comes that, and that will, and I think that could well happen. Kristan, you mentioned the word elite club, and I have some doubts over it. This might be clipped up, but I'm always just going to be honest. I have major doubts over Eddie Howe because of his time with Burnley. I think it was all very cuddly and lovely at Bournemouth, and everyone bowed down to him. Oh, Eddie Howe, you're the best. You're the best. You're the most amazing thing since sliced bread. Went to Burnley, absolute failure. I'll land on my sword on that one. What is giving you the confidence that Eddie Howe is the man to take Newcastle from the relegation zone, actually not even the relegation, at the bottom of the league, to being an elite club in 2-3 years? Like, is Eddie just a middleman?
It's a fair question to ask, I think, because, and to be honest, he's even said this himself, elite club is not on the agenda right now. Survival is on the agenda.
Okay.
So I think in terms of that long-term push towards being at the top, that's harder to envision, if I'm honest, because even at the sort of top end of Bournemouth, it was about top half. It was okay. There was some good signings. There was some bad signings. You could say that really about any manager. The football was nice, but sometimes it wasn't maybe clinical enough, or it wasn't ruthless enough, I think. And they did become a little bit too easy to beat in his last year. I mean, that was one of Bruce's best wins, was at Bournemouth, where just tore them a new one. Like, it was rough to watch, to be honest. I was amazed that we came away with 4-1 result. But I think right now, you can't look further than the short term. I've asked myself that recently. If we go down, do we want to keep him on board? If you gave him a sort of a blank slate and a lot of money, could he then build a squad that gets us up and moves us on to the next stage in the Premier League? There's so many questions that unfortunately only time will answer. And that's why, when you say like, oh, you're rolling in money, this must be amazing. We can't, because every news agent is shut, so we can't cash the check. Like, you can't do anything with it right now. It's all about waiting until 6 o'clock in the morning when everything opens up. Right now, it's a lot of speculation about what might happen.
Do you trust Eddie Howe in the January transfer window? Because he has signed some absolute stinkers for Bournemouth in his time there. Jordan Ibe, 30, 35 million. Like, do you genuinely trust that he will bring in players that can keep you up?
Well,
now,
I think,
by the way, you can't just be signing players for growth. You need to sign players to keep you in this league now, Kristan. So
here's the thing. He might say, I also signed Nathan Ake. I also signed Dom Solanke, who's coming good for Bournemouth now. There were some good ones in there. I don't want to sound too much like I'm his agent, but
no, there were.
There were some good ones. Lewis Cook was one I thought did quite well. He also, I think, did a good job of actually maintaining the ones that came up with him, sort of the Steve Cooks of the world, those players that maybe 5 years ago you'd think there's no way he's playing in the Premier League, and yet carved out a very solid Premier League career for himself. So I think maybe if I was to try and point at a difference between Bournemouth and here, is I think he had more de facto control. I think he was much more, this is who I want, go and get them.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as definitive at Newcastle. I think they've still got Steve Nixon, who you could argue has his own patchy record, but I think there's talk of a director of football coming in as CEO, much more of an organized structure above him that I hope would be able to filter out, he's good, but he's not good at this. Or, like even someone like Danjuma, that was more of a legacy deal that proved really good for Bournemouth after he left, but not at the time. So I think you can sort of paint a manager into any corner you want in terms of their transfer dealings.
Yeah.
But the fact that he'll have, I would argue, a less definitive say gives me a bit more confidence in the overall ability to just find the players that we need for the short term.
Very well put, and cannot argue that at all. Kristan, before we get on to this game, which the more I talk about it, the more I get sweaty palms thinking about. What do you make of Norwich in terms of this season, how we've played? Of course, we now have Dean Smith in charge. How do you fancy us? Do you still think we'll go down?
Less so than probably 2 weeks ago. if that's at all satisfying, I don't know.
Nicely put.
I'm kind of curious with Dean Smith, because I had seen some Villa fans say that once John Terry left, they became more defensively porous. And yet it seems like early days, you guys have been okay on that front. So is it a case of, and I'm trying to think of like a Newcastle example of this, I guess a little bit like when Alan Pardew came in after Chris Hughton. Chris Hughton was like very defensively resolute, and you'll know this, and I can see on your face that not Hughton, don't mention Hughton. But for us, he was okay, and he built a really strong defense.
He was good for you.
Yeah, and then Alan Pardew came in, did the old cliched, lift the handbrake, you can go forward 5 yards more, and like everything just clicks because they've somehow kind of meshed themselves together. But in time, that freedom is ultimately what undoes them. So is what going to happen with Dean Smith? I don't know, because in all honesty, his Villa time for me was so difficult, because in the same way that you talk about Eddie Howe with Bournemouth, I look at Dean Smith at Villa and say that's someone who knows that club on a cellular level. Who knows it better than anybody else, and had £100 million player potential-wise in Jack Grealish that he ran everything through.
Developed him though.
Developed him massively, 100%, no argument on that. But also stepped in after Steve Bruce, who, without ending up in court, I don't think has done a very good job in management for a significant period of time, to the point where a lot of the things I saw Villa fans saying were very true with us. Players out of position, a lot of injuries, no real structure to the play, couldn't see what they were trying to do. And he's just come in and tightened everything up. So it's almost like the inverse of the Hughton-Pardew analogy. Mm-hmm. So it's difficult to know really what will happen. I think maybe come Monday next week, you'll have a greater idea of, actually, we could stop up. Because I don't know what you guys would do in January as well. I don't know. Stuart Webber is a fantastic football mind. No argument from that. I find him an interesting watch at all times. But are you the kind of club that would go into January and say, we're only 3 points away, let's throw 30 million at the position we feel we need to strengthen in, or 15 or 20?
Mate, we, as I said in the last one, we genuinely don't have a pot to piss in at Norwich. We've spent all of the money, and now we're going to try and make it work. I mean, ultimately, Kristan, we've had to, I guess, fill you in. We've had players not being given game time that we signed for 9 million, 8 million, which for Norwich is bonkers. Like, they're like big money deals for Norwich. So yeah. We've done our spending now, so we're not going to spend in January. So I guess it will just be very interesting to see who we can keep hold of. And speaking of which, Kristan, you have said his name already, Max Aarons. Is he the guy that you would sign for if you had to sign someone for Newcastle from Norwich? Is he your man?
Yeah, I think so. I did say to you over DM, I do like Matthias Norman as well. I know technically he's on loan or whatever, but there's a purchase option and all that kind of football managery type stuff. But one of those two are positions we need a lot of help in. You could argue the whole defense, bar the goalkeeper, needs an upgrade for us. Genuinely, like it's. You
signed the goalie. The goalie chucked one in the back of the net in the last game. So how
Dubravka? Sorry, assuming Dubravka is starting, he's fine. Dubravka I trust completely. But I forget which game it was specifically. But 4 of our back 5 were present in the squad when we came up the same year that we had the 4-3 against you. That's how in need of like a change. And I think that's been the problem with us since coming up. Is I look at a club like Villa, for example, who went down with us, came up after us, and are now looking at the top 10, having bought Danny Ings and all these like. That's the greatest example of the stagnation that we've been in for the last 5 years, is that we're relying on players that I think even if you think they still have something to give, you need a change eventually. If you're in the same job for like 5-10 years and no one's pushing you, you're not challenged by any new hires, you're going to start to slip. It's human nature. So in that regard, I almost feel like, it's easy to go get rid of everyone. I think some of them need a change, if I'm honest. I think it would benefit them as well.
Do you think, could just quickly on this one then, do you think you'll sign like a whole new starting 11? Will it work like that in January?
Not in January. That would be crazy that's when we're talking about Derby County going crazy, right. And just anyone that can get there. What time can you arrive? But I think realistically, the front three or that attacking trio, that is fine. I think in attack we're pretty okay. I think we're like a 14th, 15th team.
Hey, Wilson, Axman,
Joe Linton, Willock, who I think is still trying to figure out what position he works in, because he's being played as a central midfielder, but I think realistically he's a number 10 or like a shadow striker type. Almiron, but it's the central midfield. We need someone that is, I guess, like a better version of Isaac Hayden. And then defense, pick whoever you want. Just go and get someone, a better centre back, a better right back.
Do you know the thing is, Kristan, as well? What is it about Newcastle and dodgy defending or goalkeeping against Norwich? Because over the years, it's always against us. There's like an own goal. There's a red card. I mean, I vividly remember, of course, Youssef Safri's goal from almost the halfway line against Shay Given at Carrow Road. And of course, we've got in common, we took Tim Krul, and now Tim Krul has been amazing for us. He was, of course, a Newcastle legend. What was it about Newcastle and dodgy defending against Norwich?
I don't know, but I was worried you were going to mention that Safri goal, because one of my best mates growing up is a Norwich fan. Grew up in Norwich and then moved to Durham as a young lad.
Legend.
And I have to be honest, I was arrogant as a child. I have to be honest. I was a Newcastle fan. He was a Norwich fan. I thought, we'll go to Carrow Road, we'll wave, we'll score, we'll leave. And that goal goes in. And this is how long ago it was. This was the teletext days. This was, you just see it flash up. And then you hear, he scored an absolute worldie, by the way. And you go and watch it and you think, he's never going to shut up about it. And to his credit, he didn't. He did not shut up about it. He kept going on it for a while.
And then we basically never saw Youssef Safri again. Just a ridiculous story, that one indeed. Right, we're getting to the crescendo of this conversation, Kristan. We're getting to crunch time. What does this game mean to Newcastle? What happens if you win this game? What happens if you lose this game?
If we win this game, I think a lot of the mental pressure is taken away. Not all of it, because then we've got Burnley at the weekend. So that's the first kind of, we've done half the journey. We've got to the airport. We haven't got on the plane yet, but we've got to the airport and nothing's gone wrong. If we lose this game, then I think you start looking at the Championship and thinking, what are the good away days that I'm going to be taking? Genuinely. Because this is the thing. You look at the games we've already had. You look at the games under Bruce. We've had Southampton at home. We've had Leeds at home. We've had Watford away. Those are 3 ones where you think, maybe not Watford away, because I think we've drawn a couple of times there and lost. But Southampton at home has usually been a fairly consistent winnable game for us the last couple of years. Leeds, we didn't win last season, but the form they're in this year, I think they do look a little bit ropey. They look a little bit fatigued compared to their usual standard.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, those are your quote-unquote winnable games against the ones around us. And if you're not winning them, when are you going to win? Because we didn't beat Arsenal at the weekend. So you're banking. It's essentially that, it'll happen. And before you know it, it's 28 games and you're down. You can't keep banking on the future. You've got to focus on the present.
Mate, I really don't miss waiting for a win. I really don't miss
awful.
It's horrible, isn't it? It really is emotional torture. Let's talk about the previous games between Newcastle and Norwich. Of course, the last one that we actually played, we won't mention at all, which was the 3-0 pre-season at St James Park. We'll ignore that. The last time we played at St James Park in the Premier League was a very boring 0-0, of course, under Daniel Farke's stewardship. But before that, it was 6-2. It was 4-3. I mean, Dear Mercy, Mbakani. It was just incredible scenes at St James's Park. What sort of game do you think we'll see tomorrow night, Kristan? Will it be a bland 0-0, or will it be one of those goal fests that we've seen over the last few years?
I think closer to a goal fest.
Do you think?
Yeah, just because of the way that you guys want to play, first and foremost. Like, you created a lot of chances against Wolves. I thought you were really unlucky to only get a point out of that one. And at the same time, I think Eddie Howe realizes our best chances is to be attacking, is to be proactive, which, yeah, he could sit off and try, but I just think that will lose him a lot of support. I think what's maybe buoyed a lot of supporters and kept them invested in the long term with him is the idea that he's not going to sit with the handbrake on. He's not going to. I have to be honest, that was a big gripe under Steve Bruce, was that he would talk about, I want to be more progressive. I have to undo Rafa Benitez's work. And then you'd watch us and be like, none of this feels like it's even moving in that direction. It's 10 men behind the ball a lot of the time, and it's just not entertaining. It's like little moments of quality, but nothing that felt pre-prepared. It's that's the frustration, is when you feel like, I can't tell what they're doing Monday to Friday to get to this point. So I think if he goes out with that and tries to be confident with it, hopefully that will deliver a result, which in turn furthers the confidence. And that's how you start to build momentum, I think, is you get the result that sort of cements the ideas, and then so on and so forth.
I really want to ask you about that first goal. I don't know why, I've just got it in my head. The first goal will basically decide the game tomorrow. I still think we'll get something from it regardless, but that's me with my rose-tinted glasses on. If Norwich score first, does the crowd turn? Do you get it back from 1-0 down?
I don't think the crowd turns, just because right now you're probably hitting the crash of a euphoric wave about all the changes.
Yeah, okay.
That will run out real soon, don't get me wrong. That's very near its peak. But I think they'll stick with it, because from what I see and hear back home, there's a lot of people saying, you know what? Eddie Howe didn't get us into this mess. The owners didn't get us into this mess. That's sort of, not to be too dramatic about it, but that's the enemy. Everyone has to come together to rile against them lot. So I'd like to think it would stay positive. Funnily enough, as much as you talk about Norwich scoring the first goal, the last few home games, I'd argue, we've started really well. So we got I think it was a 10th minute goal against Brentford. I look at the Chelsea game was a write-off, because Chelsea are brilliant and we are not. The Tottenham game, first one after the new owners were installed, I think we scored after 2 minutes, real early. I missed the goal. That's how quick it was. But it's that idea of when things settle down, when the cheering stops, how do you adjust to that kind of baseline of the game? So it wouldn't shock me if we took an early lead and then gave up that early lead, because you guys settle into the game. It very much, I think, depends on how that kind of handles itself and how the players handle that.
It's going to be fascinating. It really is. Head to head from over the years, you guys are in front. We've won 17. You've won 24. We've drawn 17 times. Kristan, this is the time I'm going to ask you the big question now. Score prediction. But on TNC, we do it differently. What is your head saying, and what is your heart saying? Over to you.
My heart says 2-1 with a late Wilson goal, 83, 84. Sort of just kind of like, as I'm sat in front of the TV, just weeping furiously, we might win a game. My head says 2-2 with a late Wilson goal.
Interesting. Very interesting. So I think we're on similar wavelengths, except that my heart is saying 2-1 Norwich. I do think we'll have to score first for that to happen. But my head is saying 1-1. I think there's just so much on this game for Newcastle. I think that you will make our lives very, very difficult. We're still developing, I guess, our defensive behaviour, if you want to call it that. I think stopping St. Maximin is going to be just such a tough job. It really is. And I'm hopeful. I really am. But we will see how it pans out. Kristan, thank you so much. I'm aware of the fact that you're broadcasting from New York, so I really appreciate you doing that, mate. Thanks so much for coming on Talk Norwich City tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. Hopefully it's a good game. May the best team win.
For Norwich.
as you say, with fingers crossed.
Thank you so much for everyone that is tuned in for this TNC opposition preview. If you're watching live, thank you. If you've enjoyed it, do give this a thumbs up and feel free to get involved in the conversation on social media. Go and give Kristan a follow whilst you're at it as well. You'll find his handle on our Twitter account. And of course, as always, you can follow us. We are at Talk Norwich City. And fingers crossed, the next time I speak to you, lovely lot, is after we've bagged a mahoosive 3 points away at St James's Park on the Ball City.